Thank you. As determined by Glamorgan Spring Bay Council in April 2017, all ordinary and special meetings of Council are to be audio-visually recorded and streamed live. A link is available on the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council website to the YouTube platform, where the public can view the meeting live and watch recordings of previous Council meetings. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and Regulation 33, these video-audio files will be retained by Council for at least 6 months and made available for viewing live, as well as online within 5 days of the scheduled meeting. The written minutes of a meeting, once confirmed, prevail over the video-audio recording of the meeting. Welcome councillors, staff and members of the public, and I declare the meeting open at 2:02 p.m. The Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. This evening we have an apology from Deputy Mayor Woods and Councillor Arnold. I'd also like to advise that Councillor Keith Pike resigned as a councillor on the 20th of February 2020. On behalf of the Council and General Manager, we thank Keith for his commitment and work over the past year and wish him well. There will be a media release released later this afternoon in respect to that. The General Manager has notified the Tasmanian Electoral Commission and the filling of the vacancy is in their hands. At this point, I'd like to note that item 3.2 has been withdrawn from the agenda by the applicant. There will be no discussion on this item today. 2.1, Ordinary Meeting of Council, January 28, 2020. Could I have somebody to move, please? Councillor Browning.
The minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held Tuesday the 28th of January 2020 at 2 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Somebody to second?
Yeah. Chair, could I ask whether or not, because I was absent from this meeting, whether or not I'm excused from voting or whether or not I can vote if I'm confident that the minutes are a correct record?
You can vote, yes, if you're confident that the minutes are correct. Obviously, you are able to view
I have
online.
Checked. I have checked them, yes.
Certainly. So, is there any councillor that feels there's any inaccuracy in the minutes as presented? Councillor Churchill?
Just a minor one on page 13. It's got there, the motion was put and carried unanimously, 5 votes to 0. I think that should read 6 votes to 0.
Thank you. Councillor Browning?
On page 15, in the decision, where it's got not satisfied requirements of D10 4.3, it should have, I listened again, and it should have been, after that, where it's got D10A, it should have been P3A.
Okay, so just check. Have that
Yeah,
checked.
can you just check that?
Sure. And I think this has been fixed, but on page 27, that decision 1820 needed to fall under 7.1, not under item 7 on page 27. Oh, sorry, that's all right. There was a lot of 7s in that. Yes.
The entire version, I think so.
Sure. Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. Item 2.2, Annual General Meeting, December 10, 2019. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Brenny?
That the minutes of the annual general meeting held Tuesday 10th December 2019 at 5 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Somebody to second? Councillor Churchill? Any issues with accuracy in those minutes? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 2.3. This was a workshop held on Tuesday the 11th of February, basically covering the bushfire overlay planning training on the local provision schedule, Dolphin Sands Emergency Management Plan review, the additional $1 million of funding on the Drought Communities program, potentially altering the week for recycle pickup in Shays Creek. This was followed at a later meeting on the 18th of February, and that was a further 2 hours of training on the local provision schedule. Could I have somebody to move a motion, please? There's a recommendation there that you could use if you choose.
That council notes the information.
Thank you. Somebody to second? Councillor Browning. You have nothing more to add to that? You're fine with that? Good. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Into the Planning Authority section. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulation 2015, the Chair, I hereby declare that the Council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Browning.
That council now acts as a planning authority at 2:09
Thank you.
PM.
Someone to second, please. Councillor Churchill. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 3.1, Development Application 2019264. There is a recommendation on page 24. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Browning.
That pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, application DA 2019-264 to construct a second dwelling and a new driveway at 14 French Street, Alford, CT 168701-1 be approved with the following conditions 1 through to 15 and advice A through to F.
Thanks, Councillor Browning. Can you just repeat the CT number? You just missed a number, so
Oh,
can you
did
just
I?
repeat
Sorry.
that?
CT 168707/1.
Correct, thank you. Could I have somebody to second, please? Councillor Churchill. Councillor Browning, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes. Mayor, I'm aware that as a planning authority, I am only allowed to use the legislation to make my, I'm only allowed to use the legislation to make my decision. As a councillor, I ask the question, if the clearing of the land did take place on the 2014, why was nothing done to protect the covenant? As citizens, we need to stand up and be prepared to speak out. As council, we need to deal with compliance issues as they arise, knowing full well that we do not have the staff to be able to deal with them all. As one who cares for our island home, it saddens me that we are now going to allow buildings with heights and bulks that are way out of character on our foreshores, and in my personal opinion, does damage the beauty of the Tasmanian coastline. That's all.
Councillor Browning, I'm just asking, did you have a question amongst that, or are you just sort of concerned about the,
Yeah, I'm just concerned.
in respect to the report that
That's
up?
correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Churchill?
I think there are issues there that do need to be discussed. I agree that that we will have to, under Lupa, we will have to pass this, approve this development. However, the representor has put in relevant issues, including the possibility of land clearing, and I think that council needs to at least start to take notice of these things occurring, and if there is a way of monitoring this and making sure that it is not outside of a permit, then I think we need to start to ensure compliance. Thank you.
Have I got anyone to speak against the motion? Any further speakers for the motion where you feel that you need to say something?
Yes, I'd
Councillor
like
Brady.
to address the motion. I understand the process of having to comply with planning authority requirements, the planning scheme, and having been informed that as a planning authority we can't deal with covenants which cover items that council is a party to. In other words, in the executive summary it states there are 2 restricted covenants with council as the other party on the title, I presume the only party, which means that because of the way that this is the planning scheme works, the planning authority can't address items in relation to covenants because covenants aren't part of the planning scheme. What we're required to do now is to make a decision in council. Unfortunately, we have to make a decision in accordance with the motion as far as I'm concerned, but I feel that there is a void here where council, once this is approved, a permit issued, and this person then undertakes works in accordance with this permit, we are then a party to a person contravening a covenant. And therefore we are the only party, I understand, which has the right to and has the responsibility to, as far as I'm concerned, to challenge any works that are undertaken in contravention of the covenant, which means it places council in a situation where we have to now go, after we approve this permit, go to the Supreme Court and fight anything that we've approved. It's just doesn't ring right. And as long as that situation occurs, I would hope that in the future, whenever an agreement, a covenant or whatever, where council is a party to, is made on land that is subject to the planning scheme, that it not be a covenant that we can't touch, but a covenant that the planning, or at least an agreement. I don't know about Part 5 agreements, but I would have assumed that they were form part of the planning scheme, and therefore, and they're not, which means that we can't even, under a Part 5 agreement, deal with an issue that we might like to have enforced on these people. For example,
Councillor Brady, I just say, make sure that we're sticking to planning authority, not something outside of planning.
I'm moving towards my disappointment at having to approve this. I will cut it short, apart from the fact that I'm very pleased to see that conditions 3 read, clearing of any more native vegetation, in brackets, which include trees, shrubs, grasses, sedges, herbs, ferns and orchids, on or off the property is prohibited. The second thing is that barriers be erected to ensure that this takes place. And condition 5, all vehicles and equipment associated with construction cleaned, washed down, in other words, maintaining the environmental integrity of what obviously has been a cleared area that somebody didn't take any notice of. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Browning as the member, would you like to close the debate, or you have nothing further to add? Nothing further? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. As I said before, item 3.2 is withdrawn. Item 3.3 on page 47. There's a recommendation on page 52.
Page 50?
Yes. On page 50. I have a motion, please. Councillor Churchill.
That the Planning Authority resolves A, pursuant to 34(1)(b) of the former provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, to initiate draft amendment AM 2019/03 to the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015 to insert the bushfire-prone areas overlay. B, pursuant to section 35 of the former provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, the draft amendment AM 2019/03 is certified as meeting the requirements of section 32 of the former provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993. C, pursuant to section 38 of the former provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, that draft amendment AM 2019/03 be placed on public exhibition for 28 days. D, pursuant to section 39 of the former provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993, that if no representations are received or representations received are in favour of draft amendment AM 2019/03, the General Manager is to advise the Tasmanian Planning Commission accordingly.
Somebody to second that. Councillor Bruni. Councillor Church, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I'd just like to say that we were given a very good presentation from representatives of the Tasmanian Fire Service in a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and I believe that this is in a suitable state for it to go out to the community under public exhibition. It seems to me that they've looked at a lot of issues and come to a point where the public can now have a good look at this. Thank you.
Councillor Brady, as the seconder, do you wish to add?
No, that's
No.
fine, thank you. I agree.
Anybody to speak against the motion? No. No further comment. I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Churchill, you don't wish to add? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Under Regulation 25, the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, I hereby declare that the Council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provision of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. Could I have somebody to move? Thank you, Councillor Browning.
The council no longer acts as a planning authority at 2:20 p.m.
Thank you. Somebody to second. Can you turn your name around, Councillor Simons? Thank you.
Mental blank.
Oh, you should know by now.
I put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Sorry, now you're leaving. I'd like to say that you were here. I missed that part, that who was present. And so we've got Miss Higgins, Council's Executive Officer, Mr Schroeder, Council's General Manager, Mr Purvis, Planner, and Mr Valacqua. That was good, wasn't it? Goodbye.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Mick.
Sorry about that, I totally skipped that one. Okay, we're now moving into public question time. So Mr Graham Hodgson, did you speak loudly, don't you, Graham? Or would you, will we,
Yeah, if you can hear me.
well, we might just give you the microphone just so that it's can be heard on. Yeah, thank you.
G'day. Yes, thank you, ma'am. My question's directed to you as Mayor. Concerning the customer charter policy of council, in particular the heading when a person writes or emails. the first part there is the letter will be acknowledged in 5 days, is that right?
Yes.
Am I right in assuming that if I send a letter, someone's going to say, we got your letter, we're dealing with it? Okay. On the 10th of September last year, I wrote a letter to the General Manager, addressed as position and as name. I received no acknowledgement. On the 11th of February this year, I again sent a letter to the General Manager. This was registered and sent person to person. So I was going to complain or ask why the second letter was not acknowledged, but I firstly went to the post office to check on its when it was signed for. And this letter's been sitting there for 2 weeks, registered mail, of course, person to person, and the post office has assured me that council has been alerted as to its presence. Now, what sort of a professional system, allows this to happen?
Thanks, Mr. Hodgson. I'm going to have to refer that to the General Manager to answer.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I guess you're totally correct in saying that we do have a policy where you need to advise within 5 days that we've at least received the letter, and then we need to come back with a response within 20 working days, and it may not be the final answer, but it might be another answer, and so forth and so on, so we can update you and then go forward. In this situation here, I'm not personally aware of either of the communications, but I've no doubt to believe that we have received them in some way. All I can really say is that we've been fairly short of staff and quite a few issues in the council that we're sort of working through. We've recently put in a system where we're logging everything and making sure we get back and give us that transparency in regards to it. All I can do is maybe I can take your contact details down and speak to you personally and remedy the situation. So apologies for that, but if I can get some sort of contact, well, I guess you've already supplied me contact details, presumably.
If you collect your letter, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, no problems. I'll certainly address it for you. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to the end there, please. Thanks, Mr. Hodgson. We have a question now from Mr. Aaron Delatorre.
I noted in Section 6 that Mr Priest has provided a report to the Section 24 Committee the Statement of Expectations relates to. I understand that Mr Priest has held a number of meetings with our members and other staff. There were no mention of any of the issues that those staff raised in those meetings with Mr Priest. Instead, it seems to focus on issues which have arisen as a result of not having a permanent general manager for some time. I was just interested to know when Mr Priest intends to report on the issues that our members and others have raised.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that on notice.
And secondly, I am led to believe that you'd be aware that the ASU has raised a formal complaint under Section 339E of the Act. The complaint relates to your rental of your B&B to successive acting general managers. And I was wondering if you can explain why council was first notified of these arrangements 5 weeks after the tenancy began.
I think you'd be aware, Mr. Delatorre, that information's already been provided and I have no intention of providing it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is with Ms. Samantha Batchelor. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, also with the Australian Services Union. So just following up on that, I'm interested why a contracts and tender process as governed in the council's policy was not followed to ensure that the best price was sought for the Airbnb. No quotations seem to have been evidenced. Why was it deemed appropriate for that policy to be ignored?
As I said, it's been the information's been provided. If there's any concern I have in respect to not adherence to that, I'll provide a response. Any further question?
Yes, I'll just ask another one. I wanted to understand the process for ensuring that questions are taken on notice, are responded to in the agenda and on record.
Sorry, what was the question?
There's been quite a number of instances where questions are asked and taken on notice but not responded to. So I'm just trying to understand what the process is for ensuring that occurs.
Okay, so I have got a note here when we get to that item that your question was inadvertently missed, but I've certainly got the answer here for that to be added into this agenda. I think you said then there was quite a number. If you've got examples to provide, please feel free to provide them.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 4.2. So responses have been provided by the General Manager. There was a question from Mr Nick Johnson in respect to the Crown lease on Coles Bay foreshore and Coles Bay wastewater and septic system desktop audit. There was a question from Ms Georgia Alexander of the Fresnay Association in respect to boat trailer parking in Coles Bay and Swanwick Dog exercise area. And the bike rack installation. There was a question from Ms Mandy Raspin in respect to the Bendigo Bank Agency at the Council Chambers and its operating days. There were several questions from Mr Michael Cook. One was on public question time, the customer service charter, community drought relief funding for Coles Bay and the general rate revenue. And that's it. Moving on to 4.3. This is responses to questions taken on notice from the last council meeting on the 28th of January. A response has been provided. One was from Mrs Kath Anderton in respect to parking in the business area of Tribunna. Mr Andrew Menzies in respect to the Prosser River Mouth Section 24 Advisory Group. One from Mr De La Torre in respect to the Statement of Expectation Section 24 Committee. And as I previously stated, it has been identified that a response to Ms Batchelor's question that was taken on notice has been inadvertently omitted from this agenda. A response has been written and will be included in the agenda. This question related to personnel matters, and this will be then added into this agenda for you to view. Moving on to the information reports on page 65. Open for questions.
I've got a question there to the General Manager.
Sure.
I'd like to ask when and how the corporate calendar is going to be available, and will Council have some input? It's been tabled in the report with some wording since 2019 in August Council meeting.
So, as you'd be aware, we've got quite a few issues that we've been working through on a number of fronts, but in regards to the corporate calendar, we expect to have that back to Council in April. I'm more than happy to have that distributed earlier with the councillors where there can be input in regards to it. We really need to work with the management team to come up with those dates that are something that are achievable. It might take some time to work through all those documents and items. As you know, they're pretty extensive and they've been out of date for some time. So we're certainly aware of that issue and we'll come back in a workshop prior, but eventually back to public meeting in council in April with that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further question, Councillor Browning?
No, that's all. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Councillor Churchill?
Yes, I have a question on page 73. On page 73, the profit and loss statement. The materials and services are up $228,000 on the year to date over Council's endorsed budget. I'd like to see a breakdown of this $228,000 and a report to Council containing a detailed breakdown of the amount and how this will be rectified to balance the endorsed budget by the end of the financial year. I ask that this report also be provided to Council's audit panel for the next audit panel meeting. Of special interest out of these numbers, I would like to know the component that is in fact the legal costs in that $228,000. alluded to in note 7 at the bottom of the profit and loss statement.
Councillor Churchill, so your concerns was with item 7 there?
Yep, note 7.
Yep.
Yeah, note 7.
Sure. Do you have further questions?
I do, but on the next page.
Oh, sorry, up to the General Manager, is that?
Yep.
Okay. So through the Mayor to the General Manager again.
Can we just answer that first one if that's possible? So,
Yes, I'm happy to provide that.
thank you. And Nick, you're right now.
Thank you. On page 74, you'll note most of my questions are around figures and numbers, but I guess that's expected as a member of the audit panel. On page 74, the Department of Governance, I know it's existed for a long time, but it seems to have just popped up as something new on the agenda. We haven't seen it for many, many months. I was just wondering if there's a reason for that.
I believe it had not been reported on previously, but we saw that it needed to come into the mix, so we did so.
Okay, no, that's fine. So my question here is that, employee costs are up $15,000. The materials and service budget is also up $22,000, attributed to covering staff vacancies. So I just can't quite get why both figures are up when, if there's staff vacancies, why there's that figure is up for the staff as well as for the vacancies. I can probably think of ideas, but I don't really know.
Yeah, through the Mayor. That's a good question. I'll come back to you with some detail on that one.
Okay, and if you could do that, that'd be much appreciated. It's also suggested there that there are positions vacant. Now, what positions are they, and are they being filled, or is that not to be filled? Or
What page do you want? Sorry.
Where are we at?
page 74.
74.
Sorry, right.
Okay, so it's through the Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, it's under notes on that page. It talks about covering staff vacancies.
Yeah, sure. So we probably could have covered it in the HR section to some degree, but let's talk about the vacancies that we've got at the moment. So we've still got the position of Deputy General Manager vacant. So far we've done 2 rounds of recruiting. We had a very lowly showing of 7 applicants in the first round, had a preferred applicant, and then effectively they decided to take a role in state government that paid substantially more than what we were offering. Then we did round 2, and we had a total of 4 applicants, which by anyone's measure is a pretty low number of applicants. And we had a preferred applicant, someone from WA. Of note is that the applicants all seem to be interstate people, predominantly 80% interstate applicants for these roles, which is interesting. Anyway, we effectively had the 4, had a preferred applicant, started to progress him, and effectively come up with the same answer that once again he's going to take a higher paying job in state government in WA. So we're left in the dilemma: do we go back and go to another round of recruiting and keep the position open longer, or do we actually look back at some of the applicants who didn't have council experience, which I felt was a concern to me? We might have to re-examine those. So that's the Deputy General Manager's role that we've been looking at. The other one is we've been calling for planners. Planners are very short in the system, as we probably all know. So we put in a very appealing ad looking for planners, and we got a mighty 2 applicants, both from interstate. When we interviewed them, we deemed them to be not suitable for the role. So effectively, we've got to go back to market again. So it's proven quite difficult to get people to come and work at the council. The other role that we've got that we've just advertised is the Works Manager's role, because we've had the Works Manager resign. So we're in the process of recruiting for that one. So I think you're getting the trend that it's actually quite hard to get suitable applicants to apply for some of these roles.
Sure. Can I just ask, as just a small addition to that question, I'm assuming that the Deputy General Manager's role would come out of governance, right?
I don't know where we put that, to be frank. I don't believe it was. I think it would come out of the planning area.
Okay, so...
We might have to change how we account for that.
Right, okay.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, on that point. Thank you. Thank you.
No further questions that you can see there?
Not on those pages. I have more questions.
But no, not we're in the report section, nothing in the report?
Yes.
Okay.
The page 76. This was on the visitor centres. There seems to be a budget overrun of some $20,000 there. It's contributed mostly to stock. I would imagine that will be managed by the end of the financial year. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so I think they've been buying some stock in advance. So I think we'll see that settle down. I think it's a bit of a peak. I don't think that'll be a continuing trend.
Yeah, hopefully our visitor numbers will continue to rise. We'll be seeing the first evidence of them dropping, I noticed in the figures.
Any further, Councillor Churchill?
Yes, I do. Page 78. I'm just getting my question here. Okay. The rate revenue here is indicating a figure of 154,000 under budget at this point in time. Will this indicate, that's on the top line of that report, will this indicate that there will be a shortfall, or is this likely to be corrected by the end of the financial year?
Yeah, so as you see in the notes there, rates revenue is down 11% for the budget year to date. However, this will improve with supplementary rates and rates received in advance at the year end. So
Okay,
I think
so-
that note pretty much covers that.
Yeah, so the rates received in advance that's a considerable amount most years, I'm assuming. I can't remember myself.
Yeah, it's circa $140,000.
Right, okay, so that will be a large part of that, okay. My second one there comes out of note 2 on that same page, and it appears that there's a potential shortfall of $200,000 due to an expected reduction in the Taswater investments. How are savings being made to compensate for this shortfall?
I guess that's, Councillor Churchill, that's a great question we can take to the next audit committee, and we can discuss that together to see how we can possibly rectify that.
That's excellent. I was going to ask that be taken
Yeah, I think that's a wise move.
to the audit panel, please.
Yep.
Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank
for-
you.
For the present.
Councillor Browning?
Page 70. General Manager. There are 3 reversing incidents I saw in the table. Do the council work vehicles have reversing cameras?
They don't all have reversing cameras. To be frank, I'll have to check on that, but I don't believe that they would. They would all have reversing signals, but I'm not sure about that reversing camera aspect. I'll check that out for you, Councillor.
Yep.
You know, maybe it might be of some assistance.
Yeah.
Further, Councillor Browning?
Page 79. So in the agenda of the 31st of the 7th, 2019, this line update Saltworks Road showed exactly the same details.
So the second item down on that page,
Yeah,
Saltworks Road.
Yes, Saltworks Road, second item down. It was reported completed 6 months ago, and my question is why then 6 months later aren't the invoices not paid and recorded?
So I had a chance to quickly speak to the works manager in regards to that, and he tells me that I'll have to investigate it a little bit further because he tells me that there's no further invoices to come in on that one. So I might have to better understand that situation and come back to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Page 80. Triabunna Old Offices, which is the third one down. The memorial has been described as a plaque again this month. I feel it shows a lack of respect, as it was identified at the January Council meeting together with a complaint received from the Triabunna RSL Club in respect to the wording. Can this be rectified, please? And also it says here that we're waiting on advice from the RSL. Do you know what advice we're waiting on?
I believe the advice related to understanding whether the RSL were happy to go with a temporary, a transportable cenotaph as opposed to a fixed cenotaph. So I think there was still some discussion in that regard.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Any further, councillor Browning?
Yes, I've just, the Bishno Hall new chairs.
Do we on?
Sorry, we're still on page 80 and it's about three down from
Gotcha.
where we were. The endorsed budget funding was 17,500 and for the purchase of new chairs. Can you explain why we spend an extra $1,985 over budget?
Off the top of my head, no I can't, but I can find out what the detail is in regards to that. I believe we're going to be looking at pretty much the allocation of these when we do our budget review. But yeah, I'll come back to you on that one.
Okay, and it's the same question for Coles Bay, it's over budget.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe the initial budget underestimated the figure, I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
we'll find that out for you, certainly.
Because it was money from the community grants for drought funding money, so there's, yeah, okay.
It was to purchase $17,500 worth of chairs. Any further, councillor Browning?
Page 81. Sealed road pavements, just that, there are 9 roads in all here written down. 2 have been completed, 4 not commenced. There's 3 at 10% completion, and I'd just like to know when these 7 sealed road pavement program to be for completion, because it's getting close to, we're February now, aren't we?
It is. So we'll get an update. We'll have to get an update pretty quickly because the works manager will be finishing up at the end of this week. So I'll get an update certainly before he goes and update you on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just ask a question in that same area there while we're at that.
Okay.
The Louisville Road, additional funds to complete the project there. It's come in about $10,000 under budget. All the invoicing complete on that?
Basically, when you're looking at this particular chart, it actually, the on-site progress always relates to the actual physical progress, and the invoice received to date relates to whether we've got the invoices come in or not. I'm not totally sure if we've received all the invoices as yet, but we can chase that one up and see if we still have some to come in.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Except we've got 3 on the go here. Councillor Browning, can we go back to you?
Yeah, I've got one on page 91. It's under planning, and it's DA's advertised. I just noticed that there's nothing there, nothing year to date, nothing for this month.
Thanks for pointing that out, Councillor Browning. It looks like there's some sort of omission there, but we'll chase that one up as well.
It would be nice if there wasn't.
Okay, is that all, Councillor Browning?
I have one more on, oh, no, I haven't, no, not in reports,
Not in report?
no.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Simons.
It's page 91, and I'd probably direct this to our General Manager. I'm just looking at the building approvals. 2018, 2019, year to date, were around a dollar value of 32 million, yet this year we're down at 15 million. Are they comparable, those figures? As in they're the same, it seems like a big drop in dollar value in the value of the works and also in the number of permits required.
Yeah, Councillor Simon, I'm not sure if, I'm just thinking about whether this column 2018-19, it says previous year to date, whether that effectively just means the entire financial year and whether we're comparing a part year to a full year. I think that might be part of it. But I've not specifically asked the question, so I guess I'll chase that one through for you. Certainly.
I've noted that too.
Any further, Councillor Simons? No. Councillor Brenny, patiently waiting.
Yeah, some of mine have been covered. On page 79, could the reference to the Bichonneau dog exercise yard be removed? That is not proceeding.
Yeah, thanks for that. I thought we'd already removed that, so I'm surprised to see it's still there. I'll take that one out. Councillor Breen.
I'm fine, thank you.
Councillor Churchill?
Yes, I still have a couple more on this from these pages, if that's all right. The General Manager, on page 82, yes, the gravel sheeting. The allocation for the year was $225,000. That's gone to $242,228 now. I'm wondering if, and I see also that there's tenders gone out for gravel for the next financial year, for
Yes.
the 2021 financial year. I'm wondering if there is any of that necessary to do more gravel in this financial year. Is it more gravel required for this financial year? Because we've still got 4 months to go, and it would seem improbable that we're not going to be using materials in that time.
Yeah, Councillor Churchill, I think we've already discussed this before, if I don't recall incorrectly, but the advice that I gave at that time was that from this particular segment of funds that we're not going to have any more expenditure in that regard. We're only going to be using OPEX rather than CAPEX.
Okay,
So, but I think it's a good point to raise them, and we hope to get a good deal when we go out to tender.
good. Okay, look, sorry to bring that up again if it has been discussed in the past. And oh yes, also on that same page, the Bichonneau foreshore track, there's a note there saying project allocation to be reviewed. Now, it looks like we've already spent the budget on that. So when that note referring to project allocation to be reviewed, does that mean that there is more money required to complete that project? Or?
Councillor Churchill, I wouldn't draw that conclusion from that note, but I know that we need to review this entire package, and I now wish I'd had the Works Manager to come in and maybe answer some of these questions directly for you, but I'm having to make do as it stands. I can't give you any further detail in that regard, but I know that we're going to basically go through all of these allocations and work out. We may well be submitting something back to council to say how we're going to be spending the rest of the funds.
All right.
So it's probably not worth any further questions on this entire sheet, but if you've got anything specific, I'll still take it.
There that I would like to put, just one more if that's okay.
Yep.
It's on the Coles Bay Hall and Coles Bay toilets.
Right.
There was an allocation of $20,000 to do the toilets. That's already run up to $33,000.
Yep.
That's fine. well, I don't know whether it's fine or not, but the Coles Bay Hall itself, its repairs and maintenance to be done there, had an allocation of 47. It's only 23,000 to be spent, has been spent there. So of that total of 67,000, will that cover those two projects?
I think what I'm sort of rapidly understanding as I go through this is that a lot of these original estimates, I just don't even know where they've come from. I don't have a lot of confidence in some of these estimates that have been put forward for these costs. We're working through to try and understand what the true cost of doing some of these activities are, and we will be reviewing this document.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a few questions. You've done the update on human resources. Camera's one done. On page 73.3, if council could be provided some more information there in respect to insurance claims and annual rental charges. I'm not sure if you could provide some information in respect to that. I don't actually know what that is, what insurance claims or what annual rental charges we have.
Yep, so I'll come back to you on that.
Sure. On page 79, the top item, Buckland Nugent Road, it says the adopted budget estimate is 139,000, and over in the comments it talks about 330,000. Council endorsed 330,000.
Yeah, okay.
So that needs to be the figure. That was at the last council meeting.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for that.
So I'm just having a look. Quite a few of these things have been picked up. On page 81, there's a sealed road pavement assessments of 25,000. It's at the very top of the page. So sealed road pavement assessments, it's a condition inspection, 25,000. Nothing's been done to date. I assume that 25,000 could go towards the recommendation of Mr. Priest in getting an assessment report. Is that what that money was for?
It's not allocated for anything at the moment. It needs to be taken through and reviewed. I mean, if you're saying that I'm just going to commit right here and now to move $25,000 of sealed pavement assessment money across to do an assessment of
sealed pavements.
Okay. I've not given it any consideration, just to have it levelled at me at this juncture. I've not given any consideration to it, but I'm happy to consider that. But I'm not going to agree to it at this point in time because I have not had a chance to consider it. So
Okay.
why would I?
No, what I'm saying is according to the report, there's 0% done. I'm just asking, do you know if that money is available to be used for a sealed pavement report?
I think I've made it fairly clear that we need to review the entire document, and I think it's available, but I'm not sure at this point in time.
Okay, that's fine. As a member of the Hall Committee, on page 83, the Tribunna Community Hall kitchen renovation, there was 20,000 budget, 23,000 spent, but the Hall did commit to putting, I think it was up to 5,000.
Where are we? Oh, down here. Yep.
To putting up to 5,000. So if the Hall could be informed ASAP if they only need to put in, the 3.8 rather than the full 5. If all the invoices have come in.
Yep.
And I'll just do a quick flick.
Should be happy with it.
The only one here on page 97. This was in relation to an extension of time on some of the projects for the the community grants.
Yes.
Since the agenda's been published, has there been any response?
Yes, we ended up receiving the advice on last Friday that we've got the extension that we require.
Good. Good. Relieving. I've just got a question on page 98, and it's maybe one you need to take on notice, but it's a Bichonneau boat ramp.
Yeah.
And there's been an extension to the Bichonneau boat ramp. There's a picture there. And whilst Mars generally pay for the works to do now, we're then responsible for the asset, hence the liability, hence the ongoing maintenance costs and so forth.
It might depend on the agreement that's been entered into, but generally that's true, yeah.
I think 100% that's true. I don't think there's anything
Okay.
that they maintain. So I'd just like to find out, you don't have to do it now, but find out what is the process there where council actually agrees to take on these assets, which then turn into being a liability for community, that we just need to manage that.
Yeah.
There might be a process, but just if we can find out what that is.
Yeah.
And we're in management reports. And just one other on page 102. About 3/4 of the way down the page, it refers to Crown Land reserves have been submitted. Weed control work on a number of Crown Land reserves have been submitted to Crown Land Services via Crown Land inquiries, waiting a response. I'm just wondering, see that one? Yeah. I'm just wondering, who pays for that weed control on Crown Land if it's not a leased area to council?
I will take it as a question on notice. I'm not sure if there was some funding achieved where it was a one-for-one relationship, but whereby the landowner provided an amount and we had funding for an amount. I'm not sure if that
So
relates to that.
Crown,
to
no,
that
I
or
think
not.
that's separate.
That might be a separate
Yeah,
one.
if you could find out,
Yep.
because there's a lot of Crown out there and a lot of weeds, I would think, so
Yeah.
it could be very costly.
Okay.
And just the bottom paragraph there, it refers to a workshop. We'll be seeking input from councillors and or senior management, and a workshop has been organised. I don't know when that workshop is.
I imagine it's not a council workshop, but I'll chase that one up for you.
Oh, sorry, I read it there when it said councillors' input, that it was a council workshop, but it's not. I don't know.
I don't
If
know
you
the
could let us
details.
know if there's going to be a workshop.
Sure.
That's it for me. So could I, on page 104, there is a recommendation. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Browning?
That the management reports be received and noted.
Somebody to second, please. Councillor Breeny, put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 6.1, Statement of Expectations. Committee terms of reference. There is one recommendation at the end of the section 24 committee documents, but I would ideally prefer to have a motion on each one. Councillor Breeny?
Chair, I'd like to move a motion in relation to that. It's simply a motion to receive and note the terms of reference. And my motion is that the Statement of Expectations Committee - terms of reference are received and noted.
Somebody second that motion? Second? Councillor Churchill? Are we... Is it there? Yep. Correct, Councillor Breeny? Can you read it?
Thank you. Yep, that's fine, thank
Okay,
you.
so seconded by Councillor Churchill. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Breeny?
I think it is self-explanatory. I think
Fine. Councillor Churchill, anyone wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. 6.2, again,
Again, Chair, if I could,
Councillor Breeny.
please, I'd like to propose a motion. I'll hand that on. I'm just going to try to remember what it says.
Oh,
It's all right, I think I have a second copy. Maybe I don't.
you could read it first and then hand it along.
That might be a really good idea.
Good idea.
And the motion reads that, 1, the the statement of expectations dash advisors' reports are received and noted, comma, and number 2, the council requests the general manager to provide a report detailing how the recommendations will be addressed, comma, funded and prioritised, with this report being presented to council at its March 20 ordinary council meeting.
Okay, we might just wait for that to be placed up on the screen.
Sorry,
No, you're right.
formatting issues here.
Okay, councillors read that. Would you like to read it out again, councillor Brenny?
If somebody could verify that what's up there is what I read.
Can you put a bit of cooling air on, please? It's got a or open the door and turn off the kettle, or it's just got a bit hot. The door, Josie, that'll do. We'll do it the country way and turn off the kettle. Thank you. Okay, would you like to read that?
If somebody could verify that it's up there. The motion is that 1, the statement of expectations dash advisors' reports are received and noted, comma, and 2, the council requests the general manager to provide a report detailing how the recommendations will be addressed, comma, funded and prioritised, with this report being presented to council at its March 2020 ordinary council meeting.
Can somebody to second that? Councillor Churchill. Thank you. Councillor Brennan, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, the advisors' report contains the recommendations on page 10, starting at 107. It is important for us as council to ensure that we are able to see how these recommendations will be addressed, funded and prioritised so that we can adequately deal with the matter in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Churchill,
No, nothing additional
Nothing.
to that. That's, thank you.
anyone wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Simons, are you happy?
I was just wondering whether our general manager will be okay with that time frame, perhaps. There's quite a few recommendations in there that...
General Manager?
At the moment, I guess with depleted staff levels and one staff member currently taking 2 weeks off sick leave, it's going to be difficult to meet some of these criteria. I'd say that if we could probably make it April, I think there'd be a much better chance of accommodating it, but it's not my call ultimately.
So perhaps Councillor Bruni could reconsider the motion.
Chair, through the chair,
You can't reconsider. Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, it's,
Make another one.
you'd have to foreshadow, and yeah, or you could amend the motion. You could put forward an amendment to change the date.
Yes, and would Councillor Bruni put that
That doesn't-
amendment
no,
forward?
you
or
would. You can right now. And you would need somebody to second it.
Yes, so I'd like to put that forward and we'll see how that goes.
You need to tell me what your motion is.
So that it'll be basically the same as Councillor Bruni's, but we'll just change the date to April 2020.
Could we just take out that little comma thing there, please? Okay, so we can have somebody, if somebody wishes to second that time frame, then obviously that would come back into the main motion, but we'd have one, obviously would be going with your April date rather than the March date. So, is there a councillor that wishes to second that motion to push it out to April? No. No. Okay, so that is lost. We got for the sake of not getting a seconder. Okay, moving back to the original. I think, looking at these recommendations, most of this is outside assistance. The requirements to fulfil is outside assistance, so finding somebody, getting a price and prioritising it. So it's not a matter of getting them all done in that time, it's coming back with a plan on how they'd get done, and I think most of it is from outside sources. So I'm happy to support this motion. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Breeny, Browning, Churchill and Wisby. Against? Councillor Simons. The motion's carried. 6.3, Statement of Expectations Committee Meeting.
Here we go again.
Councillor Breeny.
Through the chair, looks like I'm dealing with the statement of expectations issues, but they're all pretty straightforward to me, and I'd like to move that the Statement of Expectations Committee Meeting Minutes 20 January 2020 are received and noted.
Somebody to second that? Councillor Browning. Councillor Breeny, do you wish to speak to that?
No, I think it's self-explanatory.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
She's fast, but.
Yeah, sorry. Well done. 20th of January 2020,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just as your heading says. Okay, so we had Councillor Breeny moved it, Councillor Browning seconded. Councillor Breeny, do you wish to speak? No? You said no, didn't you? It's self-explanatory. And then Councillor Browning, you don't need to, do you need to say anything? Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Okay, I'll put it, all those in favour. It's unanimous, thank you. Moving on to item 6.4. I'll just note here that the wrong heading's in. It should be the Tribunna Recreation Ground, section 24. And if at all possible, if we get the year put in on 2nd of October of the year that it was held, just for the future decades going forward, would be handy. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Churchill.
I'd move that the Tribunna Recreation Ground Section 24 Committee meeting minutes be received and noted. That's part one. Part two of the motion is that the committee be advised that under Council's curbside vendor policy, there is no need to obtain approval from the Section 24 Committee. And three... Sorry. I'll give it to you.
I think he's just going to read it and then give it to you.
It's okay, I can give it to you and I'll complete the last part. Part three is Council are provided with a copy of the landscape plans and the Council recommendation referred to in the minutes at dot point 3 under new business.
Types like you, Annie. Okay, so it was, so the motion that the Tribunal Recreation Ground S24 committee meeting minutes be received and noted to the committee be advised that under Council's curbside vendor policy, there is no need to obtain approval from the S24 committee. And 3, Council were provided with a copy of the landscape plans and the Council recommendation referred to in the minutes at dot point 3 under new business. Okay, could I, let's, Councillor Churchill, could I have somebody to second that motion, please? Councillor Breeny. Councillor Church, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I think it's on page 2 of our curbside vendor policy that there's no requirement to report to the Section 24 committee or to the committee involved. Yeah, it'd be just nice to be able to follow that $10,500 there being spent on landscaping around the recreation ground.
Sure, so some clarification. in
Some
respect to that.
clarification around it.
Okay, going to Councillor Breeny as the seconder.
Yes, just a question as well regarding the curbside policy. I think we allocate areas, but not necessarily. Hang on, no. There's question. Is there a question to the General Manager through the Chair? Is there a question as to whether or not Council's curbside policy is in fact valid at all?
That's correct. There's effectively no bylaw that enforces the curbside policy. The investigation we did previous indicated that the idea of having a curbside vendor policy will be removed from most councils because they don't have a bylaw to support it, so there's no head of power to instate it. And in fact, in future, the head of power or bylaw won't be authorised. So at the moment, the curbside policy, vendor policy really has no impact.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Breeny and General Manager, we do actually have one though, and we have one in place, so it needs to be brought to council if that needs to change. But because it says in the policy for events organised by local clubs, association and community groups within the municipal area, such as rostered sporting events at the recreation ground, the Australia Day event, on and on, written permission from the organising group is to be obtained to allow any mobile food van, whatever else, to participate at the event. That's what our current policy states. So that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, there's no mention of the Section 24
No,
committee.
I think it just confuses the whole matter.
Yes.
So you're okay with that, Councillor
Thank you.
Breeny?
Yep.
Any further comment? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Item 7.1.
I would like to move that that referencing Council Decision 252/19, Council agrees to expand up to an additional $161,000 to complete Stage 1 of the Prosser Plains Raw Water Scheme. For example, completing of the pumping station and commissioning of the pipeline, which in turn will allow Council to meet the obligations under the water supply agreement dated 8th February 2019. 2, the General Manager is authorised to take all reasonable and necessary steps to secure the loan of the additional monies referred in Recommendation 1 set out above. That should be referred to probably, including gaining approval from the Treasurer, making application to TASCOR for the loan, and executing all relevant documents for and on behalf of Council, including applying for Common Seal of Council if required.
somebody to second that motion, please? Councillor Browning. Is there any chance of trying to get that air conditioning going? I'm actually getting a headache. There's no air in this room. Thank you. Councillor Churchill, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, briefly, if I may, Mayor. I know this has been discussed a lot over the last few months, but I just want to assure the community that I'm personally concerned about the need to borrow yet more funds for this project, and it's a project that council has inherited from the previous council. However, legal advice to council states clearly that council must complete stage 1 of the Prosser Plains Raw Water Scheme. That is, we must complete and commission the pipeline. Stage 1 is very close to completion. I'd like to emphasise that council has no choice but to complete stage 1, and we must do so to reduce financial and legal risk to council and ratepayers. And let's hope that we do get this now completed on time. All indicators are from our managing company, Macquarie Franklin, that is going to occur. So that's good to have them indicating this.
Councillor Browning,
Yeah,
as a seconder.
Through the Mayor, I agree with everything that Councillor Churchill has said, but I have a question in the report on page 117. It says that geotechnical engineers have been on site to assess the cliff face close to wet well, currently waiting reports and recommendations. Could you explain why there was a need for the assessment and what it was, if you know?
Yeah, so it related to, they just weren't sure if that rock face was actually stable or not. There were some concerns about maybe rock dropping down and impacting on the stairwell. So you could have a person walking on the top of the wet well in the stairwell, and you could have a rock fall. So it was really just mitigating a safety issue. I'm pretty sure it was favourable, but I'd need to just confirm that one.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Brenny.
A question to the General Manager through the Chair. Two things. Are Macquarie Franklin the consulting engineers for this project? First question.
Right. The first question is that Macquarie Franklin are undertaking the role of superintendent in regards to the project.
And
So
then-
they're overseeing the control of the project and the financial machinations and the progress.
Okay, and to continue on from my question,
Yeah.
in that case then, they are not the design engineers?
They are not the design engineers.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. Now, before we go on, I'd like to sneak back to page 5 and just say, I request elected members to indicate whether they have, 1, any interest personally or via a close associate, as defined in section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or any conflict as described in Council's Code of Conduct for councillors in any item in the agenda, because I forgot to ask. No conflicts? Good. Nice. Now, moving on to 7.2, the draft 2019-2020 annual plan. I now invite the General Manager to speak because new information has come to hand since the agenda was published.
Thanks, Mayor. Upon a bit of consultation and further reflection, we think there's probably some changes there to be made to the annual plan, so we'd like to withdraw it and bring it back to the next council meeting with a few amendments, please. Thank you.
So, withdrawn.
Withdrawn, thank you.
7.3, sale of public land 2A Davidson's Place, Tribunna. A motion, please.
Chair, I'd like to present a motion if I'm
Sure.
permitted.
Yeah.
I need to have clarified by you if my motion will override the recommended motion on page 121.
Well, you're putting the motion, so that's only, yep, so whatever you say is your motion.
Okay. My motion is that the proposed sale of public land 2A Davidson Place, Triabunna is deferred to the March 2020 Ordinary Council meeting or a special meeting of council to allow for further advice to be provided to councillors or to council. Sorry. Thank you.
We'll just get that up.
Whoa. So lucky. That could have been nasty. Thank you.
Okay, somebody to second that? Councillor Browning? Councillor Brennan, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, please. Thank you. Having looked at the report and being presented with considerable legal advice and considerable comment, I find myself unable to make an informed decision on this matter without having several serious issues clarified. The issues relate to comments being made both from council's legal advice and in subsequent comments to that legal advice. For example, I'll just read a couple of random things out that question, bring into question to me the fact that I can make an informed decision on this the way that it was presented originally. If council ultimately decides to sell/transfer 2A Davidson Place to Centrecare, this decision may be appealed to RIMPAT and council would incur legal fees if it wished to defend its decision. That is an example of questions or risks that are being made aware to me. Given the lack of evidence of both the council decision and giving all of the necessary notices, it's questioning again. It's not solid ground, as far as I'm concerned, for me to make a decision. I recommend that the process embarked on in late 2014, early 2015 be abandoned. Well, why was it undertaken then, and why are we being asked now to make a decision on something that happened back in those past? I recommend that any fresh process be commenced once council has resolved. So we're expected then to take on some new direction once we make a decision here. I would prefer to see, based on the information which is available to council, the general manager and staff, and to legal, I presume, council's legal advice and others, I'd prefer to see a definitive statement being made as to just exactly what we're getting ourselves in for by approving the sale of this at this stage. Not that I'm not saying that it won't happen or that it couldn't happen. It could, but I certainly can't make a decision based on what I've got at the moment. Thank you.
And so you're the mover. Who was the seconder on this?
Me.
Browning.
Thank you, Councillor Browning. Councillor Browning, as a seconder, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've found this really complex matter with differing qualified advice, some of which we didn't get until yesterday. I just feel that maybe it should have been workshopped and to have the questions answered, and I don't think I'm in a position to make an informed decision at this time. So there's so much. You can see all my sticky notes.
Does anyone wish to speak against the motion? No.
Question though.
Councillor Simons?
I'm not sure who can answer this, but does it affect the timeline to Centrecare's building? How?
That is-
Because I know it was quite a tight time frame to gain the funds and what have you. Does this affect that?
It would because I think it was December. Yeah, they don't need it to be done.
Yeah.
So, yes, there would have to be further conversations, I would think. And I was going to speak last, but I was going to touch on that too, Councillor Simons.
Yeah. That's all
Yeah.
I've really got to say on it, I think.
Councillor Churchill, did you want to say anything?
I think Councillor Simons has raised it and you're clearly going to talk about it too, but it's the urgency that
Yeah.
is in my mind.
Yeah. So in my mind, it is the urgency. The way I've looked at this is that I couldn't make a decision on part A of the recommendation that's here today. I'm not saying that I couldn't relook at that at some point in the future, but I'm very, very, very interested in social housing or affordable housing in the area. I think there's a huge need, and I think that most of the councillors feel the same way. There is more land in that area in the general vicinity other than that land which has got the notation across it, and potentially there could be other land that we're not aware of, and maybe the general manager can find. But there is other land in that area without the complexities of the notation that could be suitable, and possibly you or somebody may wish to amend that motion in relation to for the general manager to have the conversations with a Catholic Care Centre, Care Evolve Housing, on any other options as a matter of urgency, because Councillor Simons of that tight, very tight time frame. Any public land, of course, has to go through a process, and one would want that process to happen quickly if there was going to be another way forward to get that type of housing in the area.
Through the chair, I'd be happy for amendment, for an addition to that motion.
Okay, somebody else other than Councillor
Along the
Brenning
lines.
or Browning would need to move an amendment.
Could I just comment on that before we do an amendment?
Yes, Councillor Simon.
Would putting up an alternative land, that couldn't be at the expense of community consultation? If we put another piece of land up, we would need to make sure we had the time to do proper consultation again, which...
There's legislated requirements.
Yep.
You can't get around that.
Yep,
So it's
okay.
not pushing that through.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just us doing our bit in an appropriate time frame, or as soon as possible, to go through that process if there's more land identified that this group would be interested in. So it's definitely going through the process, but there is other land that hasn't got the notation on it. That's what I'm saying. That would be cleaner, is my understanding, as in a transaction right through. Councillor Churchill?
Yes, if I may, I think just a few words to be added to
Like
that
to move an
as an
amendment?
amendment would be, as a matter of urgency, straight onto the end of that statement should be
isn't discussion with Centrecare. It's the discussions the General Manager needs to have with Centrecare that
So
is
we
the
can-
urgent matter.
Yeah. So how can we include that into there?
Oh, sorry, keep on kicking that.
And that immediate discussions with Centrecare be commenced.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In relation to alternate sites.
I think that covers it. Immediate discussions come back in March. Yeah. Okay. I think that covers it. It's probably not the tidiest one I've ever seen, but I think it sort of covers it. I can't do any better. Okay, somebody to second that? Councillor Simons. So that will now sit. You're making this very hard for me today. The amendment was moved. It's a. You need to put the amendment.
Put the amendment,
Now-
and then that becomes a substantive if it's adopted.
Yeah, but then you can't really mix the two because they're a bit different. Yes, so I'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, bottom one, it's unanimous.
And that becomes a substantive motion then.
Yeah, so basically that one will override the top one, okay? Sometimes you just have an addition, but what we've done is squash one and,
And then you just need to vote again on the substantive.
okay, so I only need to put it, don't I? I don't need to get another, no, we've already got our movers and our seconders.
Yeah, you just need to put it for the vote.
Yeah, so I'll put the motion, the substantive motion, which is this one. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, moving on to an easier one. 7.4, page 164, a motion please.
Where are we up to?
Page 164.
Oh, you do. Page 164, councillor Simons.
That the attached Australian citizenship ceremony dress code be adopted and that a copy be sent to the Department of Home Affairs.
Thank you. Somebody to second? Councillor Churchill. Councillor Simons, would you like to speak to your motion? Thank you. Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, I think it is self-explanatory. It's as it reads in the policy.
Great. Anyone wish to speak against the motion?
Just a
Councillor
point
Breeny.
through the chair. Do we need to refer to the policy itself? The code is a code.
As a policy, you mean? Add the word as a
In
policy.
the motion.
Yeah, be
In the
adopted
motion.
as a
Yep.
policy. Yep, sure. I don't think that's a problem to
No.
the mover and the seconder.
Happy to insert that.
Okay, thank you. And I'd just say if we could remove insert name off that document along the top line. Policy insert name,
No, okay.
okay. See that bit? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's carried, thank you. 7.5, Ishno RSL sub-branch. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Simons?
That council approves a grant of $1,000 to the Bicheno RSL sub-branch towards the cost of a Cortine screen for the Bicheno Cenotaph.
Thank you. Somebody to second? Councillor Churchill. Councillor Simons to speak?
I just know from experience of being there that that's a well looked after area and this will be a nice addition to the space and it's something I fully support.
Councillor Churchill?
Oh, it's a worthy project, and I think it is potentially it's a lovely addition to the town.
Anybody against? No. You feel like to say something, Councillor Breeny?
Yes, please, just quickly, through the chair, if somebody could let me know where this is being installed, it'd be important.
Down at the, where the ambulance station is, in that space there, just to add
Is it-
some privacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know the area well. I'm just wondering where on that space it might be.
You can tic-tac after the
I'll-
meeting,
I'll
is that
go-
okay?
We'll
Yeah.
find it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. 7.6, Freycinet Volunteer Marine Rescue. Motion, please. Councillor Brownie.
That council approves a grant of $1,000 to the Freycinet Volunteer Marine Rescue VMR Association towards the cost of purchasing a 16-inch MacBook Pro laptop computer with 1 TB storage for the development and delivery of essential training resources.
Thank you. Somebody to second, please. Councillor Brownie. Councillor Brownie to speak.
Yeah, I'll be supporting this application. The Freycinet Volunteer Marine Rescue is an integral part of the coastal environment, both on the water and supporting other community groups. It has a strong supporter base and is doing things beyond its scope. And to my knowledge, it has asked for very little support from council in the past.
Thank you. Councillor Brownie, do you need to speak?
No, that's fine.
No.
Thank you.
Anyone against? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. 7.7, Drought Communities Program Extension Funding.
I have a motion, if I could, Chair.
Yep.
I'd like to present the motion that says as follows, but I'll read it out and then I'll present it.
Have you got it on a stick?
Yes,
We can-
and it's
we'll put-
under a
Unplug me.
folder called motion, and it's the only document there.
So if we just wait until we get this up and then people can...
It's quite substantial. It's nearly 2 pages. No, it's 1 page, which is bad enough.
It's funny seeing you sitting there.
Thank you.
Brownie?
The motion is that, 1, council is provided with a report providing separate cost estimates of the project A to K listed in attachment A, and 2, maps showing the location and alignment of the project are included with the report, and 3, the report be provided to council for consideration at a special meeting of council or at the March 2020 ordinary council meeting at the latest. The item, Appendix A, is a list of... sorry, that's the end of the motion. Apart from the Appendix A. Do people wish me to read out Appendix A?
I think it'd
Could
be...
we read
handy.
through them?
And it appears that your Appendix A is very much similar to the document that was provided.
It's very similar with a few exclusions and inclusions, just very few. Slightly different, but the intent of most of the A to K is matching directly this document, except for 1 or 2 extras which need explanation, or I can give explanation for.
So do you want to read?
I can read those.
Would that make it easier, councillor, if that was read?
Yep.
Or that Councillor Brownie speaks to it when he speaks?
it might be better, Chair, if I could. I might read them out,
Sure.
because then it's clear to everybody, even if you miss a couple of words in
And you
there,
could
what the
tick them
intent
as you
is.
go too, on your sheet.
If you look at the second item on the sheet,
You just need to read them, councillor Brenny, because you...
sorry, a concrete footpath approximately 400 metres long to the southern side of Swanwick Road from Swanwick Drive to Hazards View Drive, Swanwick. And B, concrete footpath approximately 220 metres long to the southern side of Wellington Street from Noyes Street to Victoria Street, Swansea. And C, concrete footpath approximately 200 metres long to the eastern side of Noyes Street from Franklin Street to Wellington Street, Swansea. And D, concrete footpath approximately 220 metres long from the northern side of Elizabeth Street from Charles Street to Gore Street, Orford. And E, concrete footpath approximately 400 metres long to the western side of Charles Street from Vickery Street to the recreation ground entrance, Triabunna. And F, improvements, realignment and paving to the intersection of the Esplanade and Vickery Street at the proposed new location of the RSL Cenotaph opposite the Gatehouse, Triabunna. And G, installation of practice nets, pitch and synthetic surface at the cricket ground in Buckland. H, concrete curb and channel and concrete footpath to the eastern side of Tasman Highway from the Gala Kirk Church car park to Gala Road, Cranbrook. And I, concrete footpath on approximately 1,200 metres long on the eastern side of the Tasman Highway from Harvey's Farm Road to Douglas Street, Bicheno. J, installation of cricket practice nets, pitch and synthetic surface at the Triabunna Recreation Ground, Triabunna. And K, replacement of steps to the front entrance of the Buckland Community Hall and associated landscaping.
Easy. Could I have somebody to second that motion? We can come back to it, councillor Simon. Somebody to second, please. Councillor Browning. Okay. Councillor Browning, could you quickly sort of run down the sheet? It would be helpful, I think, and
Yeah,
just
and
say what ones...
tick off which ones we have and we
like
don't.
miss tick.
Pardon me. Okay, the second one on the list that you have on the spreadsheet is A. I haven't suggested Hazards View Drive, Swanwick, concrete footpath, western side, Coles Bay Road to Sandbar Road at $175,000. Okay. The next, Swanwick Road, Wellington Street, Noyes Street, Elizabeth Street and Charles Street are all included here. Old Coach Road, the last one on the first page, is not included.
No, can we just hold up a bit there? I think you're doing it the most complex possible way. Can I just call it? Can I
Yeah,
just
sure.
call them?
Yeah.
Okay, the 175, ignore that one.
Yep.
Circle the 100. Ignore 67.5. Circle the 75. Circle the 68. Circle the 63. Circle the 110. Ignore 745. Ignore 475. Circle 56. Circle 20. Circle 70. Circle 408. Add a J, which is a Triabunna rec ground, Triabunna, the cricket pitch thingy, the nets, you know. And K is steps at the Buckland Hall and some improvements to landscaping.
Thank you. That was much easier.
Okay, did you want to finish? Is that it?
That's it.
Is that all you want to speak of?
That's the motion and the attachment.
Can we go back up to the, I just want to look at the actual motion. Okay.
Could I go to point
Speak.
I, please? for a correction. Point I reads concrete footpath on approximately. Could the on be removed, please?
Sorry, on.
It's
On.
concrete footpath approximately 1,200 metres long.
Oh, yeah, on. sorry.
So councillor Brenner, can you please explain your, can we go back up? Oh, down, or whichever way it is. I'll need that. Council provided with report providing separate cost estimates of the projects. The reason for that is because council haven't been provided that information?
That's correct. One of the, am I speaking to this now?
Yes.
One of the issues that was raised in this original sheet, which didn't contain the bottom 5 or 6 projects, was that the costings were available for those, but there were preferences flagged by council and by the community on other projects such as the last 4 or 5 on the list. And those costings were not necessarily carefully undertaken. And we cannot, under any circumstances, expect this place to approve expenditure of grant money that is only available, the grant money only is available, we can't spend any more, if we don't know the proper costings. And we need to make sure that the cost estimates for all of our proposed projects are in line with the costing, with the available funds. There has been back of the, what do you call it, back of the envelope or serviette, rough costings based on some of the figures that were provided in the original sheet for, per metre rates, etc. And they have been applied to, just temporarily, to the additional projects, and it's been looked at to try to keep it within a reasonable close proximity of the whole $1 million project. I have some other issues. That's as far as the costings go.
So your 5 minutes would be nearly up.
Not really.
Really?
I've only had about 30 seconds, and there's a lot to really go on here.
No, you're speaking to your motion, or that was speaking to your motion then.
Yes. Did you time it?
No, not officially. But do you have a lot more?
I have a page to read.
Oh, okay.
As to the relevance of the list of projects in Appendix A, the spreadsheet provided in the agenda is a suggestion list that we are required to use as a guide to a final list for consideration. The estimates provided with the list exceed the available funds, and we will be required to select projects that can be fully funded by the grant. It is totally unsatisfactory to consider approving any projects without proper cost estimates being provided. The comment in the report states that some of the project estimates marked so-and-so have not been verified due to time constraints. At a Community Connect session in Buckland last Tuesday, the spreadsheet list was presented to the Manager Works with a request to provide the cost estimates. I acknowledge the limited time available to provide the additional cost estimates that we requested and trust that the time provided with this motion is adequate. I am totally opposed to having 75%, that is $745,000 of the total funding being allocated to Old Coach Road, a single road project that should not even be considered here. This funding is supposed to be used as a means to foster the well-being of the whole community that is experiencing the social impacts associated with drought. These funds should not be used to prop up Council's capital works program. This project might benefit farms serviced by Old Coach Road. This funding is supplementary to other funding initiatives that are exclusively available to farmers suffering the stresses of drought, grants and loans and other sources, of course, that are not available to the wider community. It is conceivable that farming families may indirectly benefit from some projects that cater to the wider community. For example, if not most, of the rural communities in Buckland and Cranbrook might benefit from the projects proposed in my motion. All the projects listed in Attachment A are a result of direct requests from Community Connect sessions held across the municipality. The opportunity here is to provide a range of properly funded and useful projects that the community has requested. The motion does not require us to determine which projects are undertaken. It merely requests that proper cost estimates are provided for the preferred listed projects at the next council meeting, so that, as a council, we can confidently approve funded projects and be reassured that already stressed communities are not burdened with cost overruns and further debt. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Browning, you two shouldn't sit together, Browning and Breeny. You seconded that, didn't you?
I did.
Oh, good, thank you. Would you like to speak to your...
Yes, through the Mayor. I take my hat off to the work you must have done for this, Councillor Greenie, because I sat down and tried to work out how to spread it across the municipality more fairly, I thought, and I didn't come up with, which were in the Community Connect ones, the steps at Buckland have been condemned for years, and so it fantastic. So, yeah, I fully support it. The 74th, and I did try to work because it was said in the report that we needed, the projects needed to sort of be bigger so that there was less
Project management.
Yeah, that's right. And I did try to put things together, like the Wellington Street, Noyes Street could be one, but you know, I'm all for this to spread it across the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Simons.
Yeah, look, I think this is a good starting point, that we can get some decent, solid numbers on and make a decision based around it.
Yeah.
If time allows, this will take a little bit of pulling together to actually get the quotes, but
So this
if
is
we
an
can do
estimate,
it.
not the quote.
Well, yeah.
So,
Estimate,
yeah.
Okay.
So just, I'll go to you, Councillor Church, and then I'll just explain that next bit. Do you have anything to say?
I was just going to say that I too think there's been a brilliant amount of work put in there, but I think more importantly, the fact that those Community Connect sessions that we've been running have provided the research to find out what really should be within that, and I think that's been a real positive for the community, and this should be a reflection of that effort by the community and I guess by council collecting that information. Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that, so I totally agree that we need, qualified advice in respect to the estimate of cost. We'll then have a document we can put forward that is very close to that 1 million or spot on the 1 million. We don't want cost overrun because whatever we put up, we have to provide, even if our costs are higher. And also noting that this work would have to be done, again, I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, by local businesses and economic stimulus. So this is for local builders or concrete people to do this work. So it's not for council staff to do. Therefore, and as there's so many footpaths here, I don't think it'll require a lot of project management. I think people know how to build a footpath, and I don't think there's a lot of project management. The other thing I like about this is the one at Swanwick is the one that the FAI supports, and the one in Swansea is definitely the one that the older people at Mayshore support, because they can now do a blockie, and also for their fitness, whether they're on their scooters or whatever, it would make it so much safer. And the one in Bicheno, which I think is massive, well, it's certainly massive in price, around 400,000, that'll get people off the highway, and that's the one identified as the most important footpath by the BCDA in Bicheno. I also support the rec ground improvements, because we've already given some of the cricket nets assistance to some of the others for that, and I think it'd be really good to get those in Tribunna and Buckland, and obviously some improvements to the Buckland Hall, as that was a hall that didn't get much spent on it in the first round. We weren't aware of the stairs then, but now we are, so I think it's an opportunity there. So hopefully the money can stretch to do all of these projects. So I support the motion to come back with some better estimates,
Yeah.
not the ones I put there. And Yeah, next meeting as soon as possible, so we can lodge this, get it approved and lodge it with the federal department. And all these works have to be done by the 31st of December, so there's not a lot of time. Okay, I'm going to move. Oh, sorry, you don't need, Councillor Brennan. Do you wish to finish?
No,
By saying anything?
Thank you.
No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. We're nearly there. 7.8. Consideration of cul-de-sac off Sebastian Rise.
I'd like to propose a motion if I could.
Sure.
The motion reads that Council approves the name Amos Place for the cul-de-sac off Sebastian Rise in Swansea for submission to the Nomenclature Board before the 26th of February 2020, which is tomorrow. It was due.
It says by, not before. By.
By.
Yeah. You said before. It says by. Is it by or before? We need to say by.
No, I don't want to say anything, just before. By?
By.
Sorry,
Yeah.
see what you mean.
Yes. By's better.
Yeah, by is good.
So it's basically just taking out Lola and putting in Amos, isn't
Yes, and basically exactly right.
it? Could I have somebody to second that, please? Councillor Churchill. Councillor Brenny, can you speak to your motion, please?
Yes,
Oh, you
this is
okay?
this is a pet thing of mine. I refer to, thank you, I refer to Tasmanian Place Names Nomenclature Board Guidelines, June 2019. Less than a year ago, a new set of guidelines were presented, but not many changes were made to section 311, which is personal and commemorative names guidelines. There are only minor guidelines in relation to various issues that they've brought up in the last decade or so since it's been changed. But in section 311, page 16, personal and commemorative names, there's a couple of statements here that are directly contrary to the report that was provided. First, place names for features commemorating a person should only be assigned posthumously, not to living people. A second point in 311, the person being commemorated should have a direct and long-term association, in brackets more than 10 years, with the location or have made a significant contribution to the area. That may not be relevant in this case, but it certainly is relevant for when you're talking about giving a personal name to an item, a street, a hill, or whatever. Place names commemorating living persons are not effective choices, as community attitudes and opinions can change over time. These are not my opinions. These are the guidelines from the Nomenclature Board, who are supposed to be coming back to us and telling us that what we present is either okay or not. The last one is place names assigned to roads for commemorative purposes should only incorporate the surname, not the first or given names. It's very clear. It's not ambiguous, and it's contrary to what's been presented to us today. The report supports the suggested name Lola Place with no more justification than it is the first name of the daughter of one of the developer's children. Nomenclature guidelines specifically require that only surnames be used, that a person's name is only assigned posthumously, and that any such name be justified by long-term association with the area, among many other requirements. The suggested name satisfied none of these requirements. The assignment of a living person's name to a feature has been constantly dealt with by this council, and twice within the last 12 months, the same issue has been strongly dismissed by this council. The need to promptly deal with nomenclature is obvious. Any delay in assigning street names and street numbers causes serious problems for the new homeowners who don't have a legitimate recorded address. That's why we have to get it right the first time, otherwise, as in this case, it's due tomorrow to the Nomenclature Board, and if it isn't, it's going to be another couple of months delay. If the developer had been given sufficient time, there may have been an opportunity to have a preferred compliant name. This is further exacerbated by the fact that the adjoining existing approved street names are also contrary to the guidelines. I submit Amos Place as an alternative that complies with the guidelines. In March 2021, that's next year, the Amos family, original settlers in the area, not necessarily the ones that are there now, but the Amos family will be celebrating the bicentenary of settlement of the Amos original settlers in the Glamorgan municipality. The family approves the proposal. I've spoken to them, and the nomenclature board, I've also spoken to them, and they have confirmed that the name is suitable. Thank you.
Councillor Churchill?
I think Councillor Brini has covered that very well, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anyone against the motion? No further comment? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Brini, Browning, Wisby and Churchill against. Councillor Simon? Okay, notices on motion, there's nothing received there. So moving on to the motion tracking document. Any questions from councillors? Could you close the door, please, Councillor Brini? Sorry, Councillor Browning.
Through the Mayor, I've just got a question on Sweetwater Court. Has it been submitted to the nomenclature board? And
What happens that, please?
oh, sorry, it's page 178, the first item.
Oh, Sweetwater Court, yes.
Yep. Has it been submitted to the? It says in progress, but has it? I'm just asking. Has it been submitted to the nomenclature board, and have we had a response back from them?
I thought we had progressed that one, so let me chase it through and confirm that's the case.
Thanks.
I actually think I got a letter back.
I reckon it was done.
Yeah, I
But
think
seeing
it's
I've got that
complete.
there, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's complete.
I think it's complete. Any further? Oh, yes, Councillor Brini?
Just above that item, 22nd of October 2019, 7.5. Consent to lodge a DA, cricket practice nets, Swansea Recreation Ground. I'm sure that that's complete. We've given consent to lodge a document. So that could be removed, as could, over the page, 179. It's the first item, same issue, consent to lodge a DA. I think that could be removed as well, but subject to advice. Thank you.
Question 177, October 16, the dog exercise yards. I'm just wondering how the renegotiation for funding went. I kind of hadn't heard, or I might have seen it, but it's escaped me now. We were going to reuse the dog exercise money in Bichonneau for a few other things. I don't know if it's progressed or not.
Through the Mayor, I think there's a bit of a complication because at one point we decided we were going to use that money for playground equipment and to paint the hole.
Yeah. Ask if that was a possibility.
And
That was how it went.
I'm not sure where we got with that one, so I'll chase that one through for you.
I think it's actually in the list here of like it's in that
Yeah, it
works
was.
list.
I think it is in the list.
Because I know the hall painting's in there.
Yeah, it is.
10,000 maybe for the hall painting or something, so.
Something like that. I think we're going to end up doing them both, to be frank.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's in the list, in the works list, but yeah, just follow up to see exactly where that got to.
Yeah.
Or more that it's renegotiated, I suppose, that we just don't spend it and find out we couldn't renegotiate it.
Yes.
Mm.
Is that all, Councillor Simons? Thank you. Councillor Churchill?
While we're on the naming and renaming of things, just on page 176, The renaming of the Esplanades, has that gone out to consultation yet?
I'll have to chase it up for you, Councillor Churchill. I'm not sure.
It says in progress, but it's sort of been hanging around for a little while, so that'd be good if that could be got underway.
I just think in general there's quite a bit on here that can be taken away. I think, quite a bit's been progressed, and I've already asked for an update here in respect to page 181, position of the loo with the view Swansea. So it's at the top there, that council deferred to community consultation for further investigation in conjunction with the boat trailer parking funding at Jetty Road, Swansea. So you and some staff and Parks had a meeting on site up there, is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. It wasn't predominantly centred around this specifically, but it was more so to do with this spending of up to $500,000 to look at improving the boat trailer parking in that area. And was put forward. We need to do some checks in Costa. I know there was some talk about possibly putting the toilet in that area towards the boat ramp. I'm not sure how that's progressed. I'll have to ask that also.
Okay.
Just on that issue, Chair, my understanding is that we asked for cost estimates of various scenarios, removal of the piers, actual completion of the work, removal of the piers, relocation, etc., but I haven't heard of any progress on that.
There was a report in the last council meeting of different
January?
things. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's I should
Yeah.
attend all meetings. Okay, thank you.
Go back and have a read.
Yeah.
And, okay, can I have somebody, there is a recommendation there, sorry, so could somebody move on page 183? Councillor Browning?
The council receives and notes the information contained within the motion tracking document.
Somebody to second, Councillor Breeny, put the motion, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, questions without notice? Item 10, Councillor Browning.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time, but right back with the DA 3.1, I don't know if we changed, because the location has actually got Swansea and it's Orford.
Yes, it just needs, it's been described
It's-
wrong.
So back on page 9, I should have mentioned it
It
then, but
doesn't matter, it's just an admin sort of
yeah,
mistake.
yeah, it should be Orford. I was very confused for a little while. Doesn't take much, really.
So we've approved a development in Swansea.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any further, Councillor Browning?
No.
No questions? Without notice? I've got one here, sorry? Yeah?
No, after you.
Okay. That the dog management policy that council endorsed back in whenever it was is not currently on the website, it's still the old one,
Okay.
so if that could be updated. Another question is, at the workshop on the 11th of February, 2 weeks ago, the works manager presented a late agenda item for that workshop, re whether Shays Creek Bridge was to be retained by council. There's no item on this agenda. Can you please advise what decision was made?
I think pretty much as the works manager explained on the day, he had to provide that advice the next day.
Yeah.
It was a very limited time frame in regards to it. So I believe he took a reading of the sentiment at the workshop and proceeded with that.
So what was the sentiment? Well,
The
sorry,
sentiment
what
was
was
to
his decision? Because I clearly said there's no decision can be made in a workshop, so what was the decision?
The decision was to not retain the old bridge.
Okay. At the workshop on the same day, the Dolphin Sands Emergency Management Plan was discussed. There was concerns raised re adherence to the emergency management plan. Do you know what's happening there, where that's at?
I know that Tony finishes up on Thursday. That's what
Yeah.
I do know for sure. I'm not sure how far he's progressed. There's been a lot of work trying to be undertaken as to how do we transfer his knowledge out of his head into our systems. But I'll chase that one up for you, see what's going on with that one.
Okay. And the house in Swansea being leased by the University of Tasmania, that came to council some months ago, and then we asked for some figures and usage, and I think
I think it's still sitting with the relevant manager with some, what was it? Some trying to determine its usage when we've got we rent the property out, but whether you can get the details on the usage is another story. I think determining the usage was an issue the last I heard, but I'll chase that through for you.
good. And just one last item is on council's website, it still states that we've been donated a golf course land at Solace, so it'd probably be good to get that
Clean it up.
cleaned up,
Yep.
because there's a lot of things on there that just aren't happening.
Yeah, sure.
No other questions?
Yes.
Yes?
Just through the Chair to the General Manager, when can the strategic plan be brought to council for our consideration? Is there time?
At the next council meeting, I believe we can do that, pretty sure.
Thank you. And second question, are councillors aware of an email received from the Bendigo Bank Financial Services at 11:45 today? And what are the implications for council of that email?
The implications for councillors from, well, number one, we need to wait until they put something in writing, but they've given some preliminary advice indicating that they want to exit the Bendigo Bank agency.
Here in the council chambers.
Here in the council chambers, and they will need to basically give us, it'll stay in operation until the end of March at least, but it depends on when they issue the statement. Effectively what happens is that they're going to issue the statement, then they've got to go to the end of the month they issue the statement in, and then they've got to give us an additional month. Now, whether they get it in by the end of this month, I don't know. So we'll probably hold it between 30 to 60 days presumably, and then they'll exit. Yeah,
Thank you.
And it's currently operating at 5 days a week, isn't it?
that's my
Rather
understanding. That's
than
what I've requested.
2.
That's what I've requested.
Okay.
So, are we saying that within 2 months is the longest time it'll run for?
That's correct.
And then, but it may only run for a month,
Correct.
if paperwork went in. Will you present council with a report on the implications of that, as in as far as council business goes? I mean, obviously there's council banks, I imagine, with Bendigo, there'll be issues.
Yeah, I can
along
certainly
those
talk
lines.
about what the
Not even-
alternative banking arrangements are, if there's any additional costs and so forth. Yep.
We've still got a bank of other bank accounts though, and like one with Westpac.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not, it's not
dry.
a big issue with the cash, obviously it's mainly the
Yeah,
cash.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So we've got the post office and an arrangement there.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, can I just re-emphasise that issue on the, I know you've raised it on the website. It's been sitting there for a long time. Can I just please ask that it is attended to as soon as there's some staff time available to deal with it, because it is still causing, it's creating questions from within the community that are difficult for us to answer. We just say, no, it's not going to happen. That's not really good. Thank you.
okay, so in accordance with the requirements of Regulation 15.2A of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2015, the Mayor, or I, declare the meeting closed to the public in order to discuss personnel matter at 4:17. But I'll ask that the live streaming and recording of the meeting is switched off. Turn off your things.
So, is that a decision that council moves into closed session?
No, I'm going to adjourn.
Oh, okay.